Hey fam, I've got just a couple minutes here while the kids' lunch is in the oven. I wanted to make another political video and talk a little bit about policy and politics and sort of where we are in this political moment. So let's first just kind of draw in some boundaries or define some terms here. So I think that there are policies and then there are politics. This is something that President Biden observed, that he was spending a lot of time. This was in like a final kind of interview with Lawrence O'Donnell that I just saw recently. I'm not a big fan of Lawrence O'Donnell, have not really been a big fan of that guy. But I did watch that interview with outgoing President Biden. And one of the things that Biden observed about his performance in office was that he spent a lot of time on policy and not a lot of time on politics. And there is a difference between the two. So the policies are how we actually want to organize society. What can government do for us? What is government's role in national security? What is government's role in defense? What is government's role in supporting vulnerable populations? What is government's role in securing the safety of our foods, the safety of our prescription medicine? What is government's role in enforcing the laws of criminal justice? What is government's role in maintaining a separation of powers, legislative, judicial, and executive branches? There are indeed three branches of government that are intended to check and balance each other. The idea that power should be consolidated into one executive branch are the first steps towards autocracy or authoritarianism. The idea that all power, that your judges should be accountable to your leader, that Congress should follow the agenda of your executive branch leader, that through executive orders, that the president is able to exercise broad powers. That idea is not democratic. That leads us toward authoritarianism and autocracy. We are intended to have three separate branches of government, each accountable to the others, that Congress should be able to override the judicial branch, that Congress should be able to pass the laws even if they go against the rulings of the judicial branch, that the president has the power to veto laws that come up through Congress, that Congress, through a supermajority, can override the president's veto. This is how it's designed, three separate branches. When you begin to consolidate power under an executive branch, what would that look like? Well, that means ruling through executive order, bypassing Congress, ruling through executive order. That means that you have justices on the Supreme Court or all throughout the federal justice system that are accountable to the executive leader. If you have too many judges that are in the pockets of your executive branch, that is a consolidation of powers. That's the step toward autocracy. That's the step toward authoritarianism. We have three separate branches of government through checks and balances, each accountable to the other. Policies that we have broadly are intended to organize our society in the most effective ways. And what do we mean by most effective? That should be aimed toward the flourishing of all of us citizens out here, all of us voters, that we vote people into office to represent our interests, not to represent their interests, not to represent the interests of their donors, not to represent the interests of the corporate class, not to represent the interests of the think tanks that feed them policy ideas. The idea in representative democracy is that you're voting for leaders who will represent your interests. And so that means that your leaders who you vote should know about you, should know about your struggles, should know about your daily life, should know about your goals and your objectives and what it takes for you to be flourishing. And then those representatives should go and represent those interests in Congress, in the executive branch, etc. So it's not about consolidating powers into the executive branch where judges are accountable to the leader, where the Congress merely carries out the agenda of the leader. That is consolidation of powers. That's autocracy. That's authoritarianism. That's not us. We are a representative democracy. So three separate branches that are each accountable to the other, and each has the power to override the other. So that's important to know. So policies are the way that we organize society in order to support the best interests of all of us voters and constituents out here. So policies, that's how we organize society. Now politics, what's politics? Is politics different than policies? I mean, a little bit. So politics, that's the way that you build coalitions of support and you build consensus around your policy ideas. And those policy ideas come through best representing the interests of all the constituents out here. So politics is about negotiation. It's about bargaining. It's about building relationships. It's about building coalitions. It's about compromise. It's about give and take. It's about not winning every political battle. Politics is about conceding sometimes, admitting sometimes that maybe somebody else has a better idea. And politics isn't about a team sport where you only cheer on your side and cheer against the other side. That's not the way that politics are intended to work. The way that politics are intended to work is that you represent the interests of your constituents, you build coalitions, you build relationships. Ultimately, you bring to the floor the policies that are best positioned to provide for the pursuit of happiness, safety, security, and health of the constituents. So that's really important to understand the differences between politics and policies, but they do work together, and all the branches of government should be able to check the other branches of government. Okay, that's really important. That's the way our system is laid out. Now, what I'm concerned about, and this is why I've said we're moving beyond a partisan divide. We're moving beyond Democrats and Republicans. We're moving past left and right. We're moving past conservatism and progressivism, because what we need to realize is that right now, in real time, you have, for example, Elon Musk, the wealthiest man in the world, net worth something like $480 billion. And since President-elect Trump has been named the president-elect, Musk's wealth has moved from like 200 billion up to like 480 billion or something like this. He's become richer as a result of President-elect Trump's winning the general election. Musk, through SpaceX, through Tesla, has many government contracts, through Starlink, so through communications, through national defense, through transportation. Musk and the empire that he governs over has a lot of government contracts. He's getting a lot of government subsidies. He's moving into a position where he is going to apparently counsel the president as a co-president, something like this, okay? So there we should observe there is a conflict of interest that somebody who receives billions of dollars of government subsidy through government contracts is now in a position to be governing how that money is allocated, okay? So that's a concern. We should be aware that that's a fundamental conflict of interest that now seems to be baked into the way that the executive branch will be operating after Inauguration Day. Something else that we should be aware of is that these wealthy people have no idea what it's like to be you and me, middle class, working class out here in the world. In fact, if you're earning less than $360,000 a year, your taxes will increase under President-elect Trump's economic plan that he intends to put into motion as he takes office. Tariffs will increase prices for you, will spark greater inflation. Tariffs are not good. Tariffs are not paid by the country of origin. Tariffs are paid by when you receive the goods. When you get them off the cargo ship, you then are accountable to the tariffs. That money then gets passed on to the consumer, so your prices increase as a result of tariffs. So we're concerned about the economic policy, but the greater concern is that how would somebody with $400 billion have any idea what our daily life is like? So if we're thinking about representative democracy, the idea is that the people we put in office represent our interests. I don't think that $400 billion of net worth is going to represent the interests of me, Midwest middle class dude whose kids go to public school and whose wife works at a county hospital, and I work for a local consulting firm. So I don't feel like my interests are going to be represented. So I just want to bring these problems to the fore, and I want to think about these confirmation hearings. Like, these people are not qualified people. We should be alarmed by that. And sometimes we want to defend them. Sometimes we want to say, oh, well, these are the the Pete Hegseths and the Dr. Oz's and the RFK Juniors, and they're mavericks and they think outside the box. But we can't allow that if they're not qualified, if they don't understand how to run large bureaucratic organizations with hundreds of billions of dollars of budget. So I'm concerned about qualifications. I'm concerned about my interests being represented at the highest echelons of government. I'm concerned about the consolidation of powers into the executive branch through accountable justices, through a Congress that just wants to follow the president's agenda, and through a swath of executive orders that rule from the executive branch. I'm worried about that autocracy and authoritarianism. I'm greater concerned about things like banning gender-affirming care or this federal potential ban on women's right to abortion, that these are couched in Christian nationalist ideas. Christian nationalism does not represent the interests of all constituents. So I'm concerned about that. I'm further concerned that these distractions about Greenland and Panama, that these distractions are going to cause us to take our eyes off the ball. They're like already immigration raids planned in Chicago for the second day of President-elect taking office. That's a news story that's out there in the world. So I'm worried that like Greenland and Panama and maybe Canada will be the 51st state or something, that these are supposed to be distractions to confuse us, to take our eye off the ball, to flood the zone with shit, as Steve Bannon said, so that we don't pay attention to mass deportation and we don't pay attention to further stripping away of our rights. So that's 10 minutes. The oven's beeping, so I got to run. But I just wanted to lay out this video, kind of where we are in the political moment just before the inauguration. I just want to kind of root us in the here and the now. And I want to say to you, friends, I am on your side. Doesn't matter how we voted. We got to understand that there is a wealthy class that is beginning to take over the government in ways that we just have not seen in this country before, that looks more like a place like Russia, where you've got this collection of very wealthy people that are controlling everything. And that's just not the way that our democracy is intended to operate. So I want to work with you in class solidarity, middle class folk who are earning less than $360,000 a year, whose taxes will increase in order to pay for tax breaks for billionaires, and those policies are being hatched by billionaires themselves. So there's 10 or 11 minutes on the current political moment. I hope you enjoyed that, listened to it, and paid attention to it, because this is the sort of stuff that we got to start to be aware of as the inauguration is coming.